It's about to go down with Mark and Kathy, a live coaching show about dropping ideas. Mark and Kathy coach and have conversations with brilliant idea creators who are reimagining the world through the expression of their words, thoughts, and action.
Now, I hope the world is ready because it's about to go down. I'm Mark Williams.
I'm Kathy Ermias.
And Kathy is an awesome coach, speech coach and marketing coach who has worked with professionals around the world on expressing their ideas. She has coached TED speakers. She has delivered a talk from the TED stage, and she has organized TEDx events.
And Mark is a world-class, world champion speaker, made it all the way to the world champion of speaking in Malaysia and killed it there. He even pulled his pants down for the semifinals. You'll have to ask him about that. Since he has coached people from all over the globe, and we're here together as speaker coaches to go in deep with Jessi Duley.
That's Jessi Duley, the CEO of Burn Cycle, or as my good friend Kathy likes to say, a badass individual from a family of entrepreneurs who is ready to drop onto the world an idea about reckless optimism. Jessi, tell us more about this idea.
Oh, guys, I'm so excited to be here. I just have to say that because if I start sweating and you can see it in the video, I'm just excited. All right, reckless optimism. We'll just dive right in. So I'm an entrepreneur. I was raised by entrepreneurs. My parents just turned 70 this year. They started their 7th company, and these are tried and true, boots on the ground entrepreneurs. 500,000 miles on the Volvo kind of thing. Not like, I'm going to sell a tech company and have a plane. Like, they have built businesses, and they always build the people that build the businesses. And so my entire upbringing has been ups and downs, and resilience, and, finding the silver lining in things, and also a lot of risk, that just sort of became a part of our daily life. Like, let's try this. Let's do that. Why not? I mean, when you take an idea for your science fair, project to an entrepreneur, there's not exactly a no. It's like, let me see if I can get a generator. Yes, let's do that. So there's a lot of risk. There's a lot of yes. There's a lot of creativity, and there's a lot of challenging times and stuff. But I think it's part of my DNA to find this optimism and this positivity in it. And when I became an entrepreneur myself, and then also became a parent, I started to get very paranoid about being able to share these values with my own children. And can you teach optimism? Can you learn it? Like, where does it come from? How do we embrace it? And also the term reckless optimist, my mother coined that, because evidently when I was a child, if you put me in a helmet, I'll do anything. Still applies. To be honest, still applies. So,
Jessi, I love this. Everybody who knows you knows that this is like you, who you are through and through. It's so amazing to see. I would love to have a conversation with your mom. It's the Kath, right? I always remembered that. You call her the Kath. I love that. And we share names, Kathy, Catherine, whatever. Oh. I love that she saw that in you from when you were young, and anybody that knows you knows that you are, and it's weird. I want to kind of explore the reckless piece of it, because I actually don't think you're that reckless. Like, because you're willing to do so much, it's like one of those weird terms where because you're willing to put yourself out there, it doesn't end in a wreck. Like, and a lot of people won't step into it. And I know that you're out there in the community, especially in the community in Portland. Like, so many people adore you and adore your work and adore your thoughts. And you really do care about people. I want to ask you a question though, really quick, because I know that you've shared this thought of being a reckless optimist with people on stages, and you've talked about it, and it's so much part of your brand. How would you like to evolve this more? Like, what would you like somebody to do with it if they hear it? You already mentioned, like, how do you teach being an optimist? Like, what can people do with that? Let's start with that. Let's start with the end, right?
Yeah. I think, it's such a great question. And yeah, the reckless part is maybe reckless when I was a kid, maybe reckless when I was in my 20s. But you know, I think, I think I see so many people that feel trapped, and they won't take a first step because there's not a path laid out in front of them. And I get there's difference in temperaments, and there's you know, there's just difference in, there's so many differences, but and maybe you know, from the nature of being someone who has regularly just been willing to do things or put myself out there in ways, and then people come and say, oh, I wish I could do that, and I don't. You know, I know there are a lot of reasons why people can't, and I know you know, fundamentally there are you know, things that people need, shelter, safety, like financial stuff, you know, I understand all of that. I think I am just so curious, what would get people to a point where they would say, fuck it, for lack of a better term, I don't want to be with this person anymore, and you know, I am willing to take this leap that may lead to my happiness, which will be better than sitting here and settling with this person I don't want to be. So I'm trying to put it in a context of something that's not around like quitting your job and starting a business, or you know, or writing something, or you know, some people won't even pick up a paintbrush. I get it. Like my husband is all a numbers guy, and he's like, what would I do with a paintbrush? And I was like, I don't know. God, Google it. But I think just even willing to try something that's not, you know, that's not, like I said, like perfectly laid out for them, or the norm, or what society declares as like, this is what we're supposed to do. And so I think the goal with reckless optimism could even be something as simple as a mindset of like, what is the worst that could happen if you actually found the silver lining in this? Or what is the worst that could happen if you approach this from a mindset first? And then maybe that's the gateway drug, right? That then they'll take the action. If they're like, you know what, actually, if I found the positive in this, it was way less draining than focusing on the negative. Okay. So how do you get people to look at the cup half full? How do you train people's brains to do that? You know, we have the whole bias from when we were cave people, right? Like that, you know, a bear got us. So remember the negative, because that bear got our cave people or whatever.
A bear got us.
You know, it's super applicable to modern day, but so I think that I don't know if that was as succinct as I had wanted it to be, but I think just even having people a willingness to approach the mindset of finding the good in like the really shitty situations of like, what can we learn from this? All right, what is the silver lining? How do we, you know, just even just starting with that. And then I think then it leads to one thing leads to another, and ripple effect happens. And so, yeah. Does that make sense? Did that land?
I did. It makes wonderful sense, and it makes sense. And yet, you said it. It's a tough idea, right? It's a tough concept, right? If it were that easy, so many people would have done it. Yeah. And what's that trigger? And it makes me wonder. You said something that we've talked about in the past, which is being transparent and being realistic about the hardships that are going on, right? It's not all rose-colored glasses, as they say. Yeah. Right?
No, nobody wants that. Yeah.
Right. What do you do with that? I guess I don't want to say it's the opposite. Reckless optimism is great, but there's a part of what you've talked about, which is the reality of hardship. And tell us more about how the reality of hardship and accepting that reality helps you to be recklessly optimistic.
I think something that's probably extremely relatable and applicable right now is I'm a small business owner. And so the business that I spent 7 years sacrificing a tremendous amount for and building, you know, in the 7 years that I've built my business, I also had 3 children. We've had it has been a roller coaster of, and that's gone with COVID. It's gone. And, you know, things I'm so proud of, you know, these things that we would put in place for our employees, IRA matching, health benefits, stuff that we had worked so hard as a small business to be able to go above and beyond to take care of our people. that's all gone. And I have spent probably the last 6 months grieving that and the reality of those losses. And I think just it's important to do that, because if you just forge on, you know, and it's like rainbows and butterflies and Jolly Ranchers, you know, it's so stupid. Then you're not actually learning anything from it. You're not actually really internalizing the reality of the situation, which allows you to then wholly, I would say, appreciate it. It fucking sucks. Like there is nothing great about that, but I can either sit there in misery and grieve what was, which is extremely draining and painful, or I can, you know, go all in on that and say, okay, let's feel these feels. Let's understand what it is, but we've got to move forward. And so it's not going to look like what it did. And so I can't hold on to getting back to normal, because I don't know what that's going to look like for my industry. And so, you know, how can I look at this and say, all right, where is the silver lining? What is the opportunity here? Because finding an opportunity inspires me. And when I'm inspired, I can move forward. And I'm not inspired by grief, and I'm not inspired by a lot, like who, you know what I mean? I don't know who is, like those the writers where they write the book and the second page, you're just like, oh my God, everybody's not. I don't know. But so for me, it was really challenging, because I just kept thinking, okay, it'll come back. And then it didn't. I realized like I said, it was my energy, which is normally very high, was so low, and I didn't know how to speak to my team because it wasn't transparent. You know, it was just like, oh, what are we going to do? And it's like, no, okay. All right, this is the situation. And now, you know, I've done what needs to happen, which is be real with it. It's not going to be the same. And how do we move forward? And I have to find hope to move forward. And so how do you find hope? You've got to find a silver lining. You got to look for an opportunity. You have to look for what this is going to teach us. And so now in rebuilding my small business, you know, I've found the silver linings, and how can I rebuild? And it's better. There's no option other than better for us. And so what can we do that's better? How can we, you know, okay, so we go from 50 people to 12, which is terrible for our business model, you know, but let's look at this, like maybe we overcomplicated this. Let's simplify. Maybe work-life balance is a possibility with what COVID has taught us, that we can, you know, we can do a lot more in a lot less time. You know, we can be more efficient with things. You know, can we regain the distance that happened when you scale a business with your team and your clients? Can we get more hyper personal with a fragile humanity that's been disconnected for 7 months? You know, so there's every little nuance in that you can find a way to feel inspired or something to be positive about. And so, but it has to come after addressing the situation with complete transparency and honesty. Is again, if we were just going along and like, everything's gonna be great, and everyone's like, what is wrong with this chick?
No reality.
Yeah, that would, you know, it wouldn't fly. And so I think in being very real with the situation, I mean, you got to go down to come up, right? You just going up, that doesn't work. You got to go down, you know, and that's what kind of create the peaks and valleys. I think when you fall flat on your face and then you get up and you think you're against a brick wall, and then you dig deep and figure out it's just the bottom of a mountain that you got to climb, and then you start climbing that mountain. That's what builds your ability to be optimistic. So again, I don't want anybody to go out and like tank their lives so that they can build themselves.
Put a helmet on and be reckless, right?
Yes, correct. If you could not do that, but given that everybody is kind of in this situation right now, reevaluating, and nobody's like, COVID was a breeze for me. Yeah,
totally.
Yeah.
You know, everybody kind of has.
Jessi, would it be safe to say that out of what you just said, because I started really thinking about the pieces of how you put it together, because I always love that, you know, you're a doer, you just do. So, but it's really cool to see you unwind it. And I kind of wrote this down. Like, I was like, she's saying reality plus opportunity plus action equals reckless optimist, you know. It's
okay, did you write that down? I'm gonna write that down.
I already wrote it down. Look, it's all messy, but I wrote it down. That's what I feel like you were saying is like, because then that takes away, and you know, people don't like that fake. We don't want the lacquer, the shine that you're putting on and everything's ugly underneath. And you're just like, okay, that's super real. That's what happened, but this is the opportunity that it created. Okay. All right, let's go.
Yeah.
And then you, like you said, like when you got to the bottom. So I don't know. I think sometimes too, like one of the things I think that people admire you for, Jessi, is that you are a doer and you are action oriented, but people don't know how to replicate that. So I think if we were to take this idea of reckless optimist, we really have to we have to make it a concept that people can understand. And so if they can understand that, like if you gave them that formula, like, oh, it's check the reality, look for the opportunity, take the action. That's what a reckless optimist does. That's the playbook.
Well, that's great. That's great.
Told you she was awesome. Told you she was awesome.
Cool.
Yeah. Say it. Mark had written it down too. He was just about to say it, I'm sure, you know. No. It's just, but I mean, you know, Mark and I spend our time like we spend our time going, okay, awesome. Like there's usually an idea that somebody has, and it usually came from something that happened in their life. So how do you take something that happened to you and have other people experience it? And so I think that's where the world needs your reckless optimist, Jessi, but they needed it they need it in a way that they can understand it.
Yeah. No, I sometimes I'm so sick of theory. I'm like, just tell me what to fucking do.
Practical. Like, let's get to the practical.
I want tactics, man. Give me tactics. Like,
because that's what people are looking for.
Yeah. They are.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: if they don't know the strategy, though, so you can't do tactics without strategy, and you can't do strategy with no tactics that are attached to it. None of it makes sense. That's why I think a little formula to show you, like, the first one's the assessment. The first one's the assessment, right? Reality is the assessment. The second one, the opportunity is the strategy. So you're strategizing and say, well, what are the opportunities, you know, from this reality that I just saw? And then the third one is the tactic. I'm going to go do this. This is the action. And that's what creates the reckless optimist. And so I think Jessi, when you bring this to, I think, you know, you've done a really good job of making this part of your brand, but I think you could wrap it up in this way that you could deliver it to people. And then Jessi does this thing that she started doing, which is awesome, which is kind of having people pledge to go to be a reckless optimist, which is awesome because, you know, it first takes somebody going, wow, I see that. I like that. I want to emulate that. But, you know, okay, I have to consciously like make a decision and make a pledge. So it's really cool. But maybe giving this formula ahead of time. I don't know, Mark, what do you think?
I think it's wonderful, but I got something to throw in here because I want to speak.
Here comes I know. Jessi and I like, all right, let's go.
I got to speak on behalf of those, dare I use this word? I'm going to try to use it in the most non-judgmental way as possible. I'm going to speak about the pessimist. I'm going to speak about the realist.
Yes.
Right. And even though you already painted the picture, it's not all rainbows, gumdrops, and Jolly Ranchers.
Jolly Ranchers.
Right? For all the people who can't figure out the next step, and even with the formula that was just put out there, reality, opportunity, action equals reckless ambition.
Yeah.
How do you know this works? How do you know?
Yeah, that's a good, I mean, my mind went right to the opportunity too, because I've talked to people and they've said, well, I can't see the opportunity. There's nothing good about this. And so that's, you know, that's challenging. It almost is like, how do you know, I've had so many personal conversations that have gotten right to that point. And then I can see a multitude of opportunities, and then they say, well, I never even thought of that. And so I don't know how you break that down, or if it's coaching, or if it's like real-time examples of something, or, you know, I mean, right now and rightfully so, there's so much pessimism around politics. And I understand that. you know, and I tell people, listen, but the cornerstone of public progress is civic engagement. So have you looked at your ballot? Let's start with Googling your ballot. And they're like, well, no, they don't even realize that there is all this opportunity to affect public progress on a micro level. Like they can, you know, the people on the school board decide the budgets. Like there are these amazing things that are happening on these micro levels that once you break it down for people. And so again, that's one very specific granular side of it, but it's again, very relevant right now that people are just like, I'm just not even gonna vote. And you're like, okay, well, what if we broke it down and made it really simple and look how easy this is? And so I don't know, you know, it's almost like you need like every facet, like relationship, career, you know, social,
personal
change.
life, like,
yeah. And you're like, okay, so here, it's like one of those, what are they're like infographic where it's like,
oh yeah,
go here.
If you say yes to this, you're
No.
Like you're hopeless. If you have no hope, like if you can't do anything, you're a hopeless pessimist. So
here we go. Try this. Yeah, try that, and da da da. So.
Well, Jessi, here's another thought too, because you mentioned it earlier. You actually, and it's so funny, many times coaching people, obviously people have their own answers. They're just this close to them. So they don't realize, you know, they can't pull out of their own words what the answer was, even though you had already like revealed it. But I think, you know, when you revealed that it's a mindset, and I even think it's so ironic that you would be in the fitness industry, because it's just like disciplining. It's like training your mind to have a different mindset. You can go to the most personal of examples. For instance, I just coached 2 college students that won they won the Invent program in Oregon. They're like, they won like the state championship for a device that they made to put on cars for drunk driving. And they ended up naming it Carrie after Carrie Lightner. Carrie Lightner was the daughter of Candy Lightner, who started MAD. She started Mothers Against Drunk Driving in the worst of the worst of the worst of the worst situations personally for her. And if you've heard her talk, even if you hear her talk like 10 years after she started it, she basically said, I spent 10 years not grieving because I was just action. Action. But I can't think of anything worse than a personal trauma, like losing a child. And people find that. And so I think, you know, as you know this, I think part of you being an advocate for this, you have to be able to motivate people with really good examples. You know, you have to show really good supporting evidence that has nothing to do with you, that makes people go, oh yeah. I mean, Mothers Against Drunk Driving started out of this same exact, you know, moment of somebody feeling like, let's have this conversation. Tell me what's good. I can't see it. Like, tell me.
No, I mean, that's a great, supporting evidence is great. I mean, I mean, again, I hate to keep bringing up politics. Like when Ruth Bader Ginsburg she has been such a, I'm not going to cry. I mean, I just have a lot. She's a big part of my life. And when her passing was it was like a family member passed, you know, and I was actually part of, I'm not particularly a religious person, but I was part of a prayer circle every morning, just praying that she would make it through the election. And so it's a regular part of my daily life. But when she passed, you know, they raised $12 million in 1 hour and $10 million in the next hour for, you know, voter registration, voter education, for, you know, all of this stuff where you're like, I mean, it's tragic. And then you look at it, all of a sudden this awareness and engagement and unification of people wanting to ensure her last wish is actually happening. And people didn't know what to do. And then, you know, one person posts that they are donating to this. And then all of a sudden you have record breaking, like in the history of, I believe it was global, but don't quote me on that. But, you know, so that's similar to that, where everybody is like, it's over. We literally have nothing left to lose because we've lost RBG. And then you hear this and it's just like, it's almost like somebody just needed to show people what to do. And then again, you know, just one tiny example, but
And people did
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
bet you there were a lot of pessimists in there that, you know, I bet you there was a whole bunch of pessimists that did realize that action was the best, you know, step to take, even if they were still holding the belief of the pessimistic view. I mean, that's another thing too, Mark, is maybe we should explore in her idea is that it's not a this or that. You don't have to hold or this or that.
Yeah, it's a yes and.
Yes, well, that's what I love about the idea, right? Because a lot of times we get stuck, right? And by we, I mean the proverbial we get stuck between it's either this or that, right? The pessimist will say, oh, recklessly optimistic. That's not realistic, right? And the optimist will say, oh, you're just miserable and pessimistic, right? But there's really that middle, and sometimes we don't merge the two. And that's why when you talk so much about reckless optimism, but you kept talking about being realist, you know, being realistic. And Kathy then threw in that word reality. Reality or being realistic is so much a part of being a reckless optimist. And so I think it's really important for you to consider how much you stress that point, right? And then we add in, right, the examples, the research examples of those people who were very realistic about what was going on. And what was so reckless about them, and you said this earlier, some people get stuck with that first step, right? But what it sounds like to me is the reckless optimist doesn't just look for the first step. They may look for the other step or another step or another step. And they won't stop looking, and they'll put the helmet on 1,000,001 times until they like finally crash through a wall. Yes,
it's
they're
like
relentless. They're reckless, relentless, and realistic.
Ooh, we got a 3R thing going on now. No, I love that. I love that we're having a deeper conversation about this, Jessi, because I think the more you try to bring this idea to life outside of your own life, you know, and you bring it to the world as more of a movement, I think it requires this type of depth because not everybody falls into the same categories. And so it takes this whole, like, how do you make it as universal as possible so you don't get the naysayers? And you know what, honestly, if you get people that absolutely hate it, then you're doing something good. I mean, you know what I mean? And it's just like, that's usually like the best sign that you're doing something successful is somebody absolutely hates what you're saying. Because if you're just neutral, nobody cares about what you're saying. If you're neutral, people are like, whatever, she's not saying anything important. Like, but when you actually say something that's really important, you will have the absolute, I mean, think about Apple, you know, like companies like Apple, where they're like, people like love them to like where they would buy them no matter what. And people like absolutely avoid them like the plague and hate them or whatever. That's always what makes a movement. I mean, you talk about the RBG, like she's probably smiling in her grave, just knowing, hey, at least if I passed, goodness gracious, that my life, you know, inspired people to start thinking and wake up and be aware and do something and take action. So,
I love this idea of supporting evidence because, you know, I want, again, to be extremely realistic. Like I've clearly, you know, we grew up, you know, we weren't financially there, you know, we had some hard times growing up. Like you can tell that where the financial upturn of my dad's business had finally worked is when my sister was born. We're very different. She's the best, but she like walk into Home Depot and be like, I love this paint color. And it's like $80 a can. You know, meanwhile,
like, I didn't come from that era.
I did not know. And I'm just like, I'll eat a cold hot dog for lunch and not complain. But you know, with all that being said, I mean, I've had no like easy path, but it's still a path of privilege. And so when I do try, I want to be very aware, or I am very aware when I come out and I do try to present this message that like there are very real factors that make my approach not relatable to people. And I don't ever want to like my whole kind of one thing I'm just so passionate about is bringing, you know, the love and the support and the encouragement to, per se, the fringes or something outside of what society has declared the norm that makes people think they don't have opportunities and they can't be optimistic, you know, or they don't deserve love or whatever that looks like. That that is such a critical part of who I am. And I've struggled to figure out, one-on-one, I see people and feel people and can encourage them, but as a whole, I am very aware of again, like how I present in this world and the opportunities that I've had that a lot of people have not been privy to. And so I am grateful for the idea of supporting evidence, because it would allow me to showcase so many different sort of just circumstances and walks of life and approaches it would be kind of amazing to have this gamut, or this spectrum of this and that, and then this and this, and there's this. It's almost like then you come at the pessimists and they're like, but, and you're like, no, I got a couple more.
But wait,
I got more.
Again,
I got one for you.
wait, but I got one for you.
Okay.
All right, and I'm about to fire you up. Okay.
Ooh, I know, we're ready.
I'm getting serious about this, Jessi. Okay.
So he has serious face.
Yes.
What makes you so pissed off about those who are not recklessly optimistic?
Oh man, they just fucking give up. I'm like, it's fucking, I just start, to me, it is the easy way, and nothing that ever matters in life is fucking easy. Like, and people that just throw in the towel because it's not gonna fucking be easy, to me, are just lazy. Sorry to say that. I don't mean to say that people are lazy, but maybe I do. It's a cop-out. The mindset is a cop-out. I understand that there are a lot of circumstances against, a lot of people. But again, you can find examples and instances of people that have had it 5 million times worse than me or you or anyone, and somehow found this seed of hope. And like, the only reason humanity is continuing and we will keep fighting the good fight is because we keep finding seeds of hope. And if people don't keep, watering that and growing that, like, I'm not just going to fucking see a seed and be like, well, hope it grows itself. Feels like it's going to be hard to nurture that. Okay, I'm going to go over here. Like, what is humanity in the world going to look like if we're not willing to get our fucking hands in the dirt and say, like, okay, that one didn't work this time. We're like, okay, we got to plant another one. We got to do, like, I feel bad I said people were lazy. People are not lazy, but people
can be lazy. That's okay. I think everybody can recognize when they're being lazy, and we all are at some point. I know what you mean. You don't want to just like say people are lazy, but like, I think you're right. I mean, we have to take a hard look and like, you have to ask yourself that question. I mean, maybe it's something you ask yourself, like, am I being lazy? And you can, I think here's the biggest thing, especially with somebody like you, Jessi, you're very strong-willed, you do things. And so like, I love when somebody takes an idea and they make it specific enough, meaning I see what you've done with it and you've done something well. But they also leave it open enough that I can look at you and what you've done and what you're saying, and I can self-select myself to what you're saying. Like, hey, if you're like, hey, I've been lazy, I haven't done this or something, I can go, yeah, me too. Like, I'm with you.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask that question because for those of us who are really optimistic and super positive, we're buying into your message so much, right? Some of us are also surrounded by people who don't so easily buy into it or who get turned off by it. And so the reason why I wanted to ask you about who pisses you off or why they piss you off is because I wanted you to think about, how do you then speak to them, right? Because some of them will turn you off the minute they see the word optimistic. I'm not trying to hear this crap anymore, right? But we got to get them to listen too. And so that's why I wanted to fire you up, because I want you to be able to get that message to the people who are not willing to hear it, but need to hear it. I
think the better word, again, because I said I feel bad for using the term lazy, is I think that what fucking pisses me off the most is apathy. It's just a lack of willingness. That's what I mean by all of that. To sum this up in one word, it's fucking apathy across the boards. I know people can be exhausted. I know people have different circumstances than mine, but just the unwillingness to keep moving forward, because optimism is, there's no fucking time limit. If something doesn't happen in 6 months or 6 years, that doesn't mean that it's not, we don't keep fighting the good fight, or we don't keep moving forward. You know, like I said, it's sort of this relentless, resilience. I think in the pledge that I did, part of being a reckless optimist is resilience without resentment. Because that part is so crucial, is that like, it's not always going to go our way, you know, like 6 times out of 10, it's not going to go our way, but you can't let those, you know, defeat you and make you just say, well, I guess I just don't care enough to try anymore. Guess I don't, you know, and I know that those people are out there. But yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, that's a tricky one.
Well, and again, I think people go through waves, right? Like somebody might be sitting in that space right now that they want to be yanked back out of it. They might be like, you know what? I used to be an optimist. I used to, you know, be relentless. I used to do all this stuff. And now the world and the circumstances and my circumstances and things going around me have beat me down. And now I'm here. And I think that, again, I think what we're all kind of saying in different ways. So I just want to verbalize it a little bit. I think that you should preface this idea always, whether it ends up being the formula per se, like a formula, but you preface it with this thing of like, you start where the realistic space is. You're like, hey, this is real. This is not being, let me just start off right out of the gate and tell you, being an optimist is not the Jolly Rancher unicorn rainbow mixture. Yeah. Like, let's start with things that it's not. It's not this, it's not that, it's not that. So you get people right away. I feel like that's the easiest way to get people, because now you're covering the whole array and spectrum of not only personality types, but people where they are right now. There's probably a lot of people right now, Jessi, that are in 2020. They're like, you know what? I used to fucking be an optimist, and now I'm a fucking reckless pessimist. And they just need a hand back up. They just need, and so they need you to be you. Like they don't need you to be apologetic for how you are and who you are, but they just need you to like unravel it for them, unlock that for them, so that they can see how to do it in their own lives, you know, or get back on the horse.
and one of the ways to help people unravel is the formula, is the concept. But I remember reading recently about how questions get us to think, right? And so if you think about reality, opportunity, action, reckless optimism, with a group of people, the formula of what's real, right? What's really happening right now? Let's be honest, let's be transparent, let's be open about what's real right now, right? And let's put that on the table. And then let's ask the question, so now what are the opportunities? Where are all the different opportunities to turn things around, right? And start to write that down. And then to start to ask your question, so what can we do now? Right now that we've looked at all the opportunities, what's the action? And then here's a part that you said earlier that really resonated with me. So now how can we make this better? Right? Because you said that earlier when you were talking about with the company. It's like, this is an opportunity to not just do things the way they were before. We're not trying to get back to normal. We're trying to get to better. So what's real? What are the opportunities? What can we do now? And how can we make it better?
How can it be better? Oh my God, Mark! See why I love him, Jessi?
It's funny. I'm also just from like a tactical standpoint, picturing if somebody comes out to do a talk on optimism, and the first thing they start with is like, well, this fucking sucks. You know what I mean? It's just like, you know, it just like hooks everybody right away to be like, I'm sorry, what? And you're like, oh, no. Just so we're clear. Exactly. You know, the secret code of optimists is that you actually have to realize that things fucking suck And then you're motivated to make them better.
Seriously. Oh my God. Jessi, you landed on a really good line though, right? I know.
Love that.
No, it's so good. It's really good because, you know, again, and I love Mark. I love what you said about the questions, because Jessi, when we ask people questions, we're giving them that freedom to say, I'm not here to tell you the answers. I'm here to tell you like my answer or how I handled it. But when you ask somebody a question, they have to answer it. Like, even if they don't want to, like if you're doing a talk, like you know, Jessi gets on stages all the time and is speaking constantly. Now, even if it's a stage like this, but when you're kind of on a stage and you're asking a question, like the audience immediately, like your brain automatically scans and goes, yeah, what is real? Like, I don't know, what's real to me? Like Jessi's reality might be very different. Like you and your sister maybe have different realities, but you can start exploring those questions. What's real? What's the opportunities? You know, what can we do? And like, how can we make it better? I love that. I mean, you really are creating an easy format for people to plug their own, use you as the inspiration, but plug their own, you know, their own custom personal information into there. So.
Yeah, this is, I mean, it's so interesting too, the thought of action. And I'm curious to explore what some sort of small action is something that you could do in a talk if you were doing, because something so simple there. We'll go back to the RBGs. You know, I know that a ton of people, exactly what I said, were so defeated and so down. And then this tiny act of donating $10 action makes you feel better. Like everybody, like action makes you feel better. Totally. Like there is, I'd love to say that that's me, but that's science. And so it's like
Jessi science.
Because evidently science is up for debate these days, and I can consider myself an expert. Anyways, but it's an interesting thought too of something that, you know, like everybody has somebody that they wish that they appreciated more. You know, like we all have those people where like, you know, I don't know, I've been married for 10 years and I'm always like, oh, did I not say thank you for like 2 months? Super sorry. You know, or like you just get, or like you don't tell your sister you appreciate, or whatever it is. And so my brain is sort of thinking of a way too of how can you get people in a room or on a Zoom or whatever to take one small action live in the moment that actually makes them that tiny tick that's like, oh, I've been wanting to text that person forever, you know? So maybe it's like
action du jour. Why don't you, I love what you're getting at, because you're basically saying like, let's take 5 minutes and everybody do something. Did you just research something that you didn't know? Did you just donate money? Did you just text somebody like, hey, and then we all come back together and we just share. Oh, I just texted my mom. I haven't talked to her for a month. You know, whatever. I just said, hi mom, I love you. Like whatever. I don't want to take for granted that you're, you know, whatever. And I think that's I love too for you, Jessi, because you speak to a lot of people, is to, you know, create this, you know, action du jour where you're just having people, because then you can actually gather as you kind of use it as your ground of like, somebody will do something, I promise you somebody will do something that you're like, oh my God, that's a good idea. So next time you talk, you can say, or do something.
Yeah.
I love that though. Action makes you feel better. I think that that's a really good supporting evidence to the action piece. Is like, not only is action actually helping to create the change or, you know, making movement, but it actually makes you feel better. Like it works for you. It helps your happiness, you know? It chips away at pessimistic, you know, pessimism.
It's like kryptonite to apathy too, you know? You're like,
I love that.
You're like, oh, I feel better. What is that? Oh my God, it's action.
It's action. Oh my gosh, I can't be apathetic when I'm doing action. Yes.
Like we always say, I mean, in my house, we always say, you know, action is the antidote to apathy. So you just got to do it. You just got to do it. And if it's wrong, it's okay. But at least you did something and you'll feel something, which is better than being apathetic. So,
I kind of like that. I kind of like that kryptonite line. And maybe because, you know, but I also like the, excuse me, English teacher moment. The alliteration of action is the answer to apathy.
Yeah. Answer, antidote. Whatever.
And I love the live, in my head, it's the live action moment that you're talking about creating, because what resonates with me about that is whatever action they create in that moment will more than likely reverberate after that moment.
Yes.
Right? And so it lives long after you talk with them.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Because like it might be kind of fun too to bring in notes of science, like the actual science behind when you know, whatever all the opamines are. Isn't there like dopamine?
The dopamine hit that you get,
whatever it is. I know there's a couple other ones and they're all in there, like what happens when you take action, but then that, you know, then every action then has an equal or whatever reaction. Again, I'm totally butchering this. It's not my specialty.
We get the Jessi science.
We get it.
We totally get it. We're with you, Jessi. It's like we're with you. Yeah, you know, because it's still creating that hit. And you know, here's another thing too to consider is everything that you do in a group setting is a gift for everybody else. And so if you do this in a group setting, you know, Mark, for instance, who lost his mom, anytime he hears anything about moms, like he's just like, you never know what you're compounding onto somebody's life. Mom, you know, Mark's like, I'm a mom lover. I'm a, you know, I'm
champion of mama's boys.
Champion, yeah, exactly. I was just gonna say, what was your title that you said? I love that. And so, you know, if you have a bunch of people in a room, you never know what one person's action is, how they're going to affect. And sometimes I think as facilitators and speakers, we think we have all the answers and we don't. It's just our job to open it up to other people, to allow the creativity of everybody, to allow the passion. We were all put in that room for a reason, and you know, the universe brings us there. And so anyway, I just love the compound effect of what can happen with things that people do or say. And it doesn't even have to be, you might be thinking, oh, it has to be super creative. It doesn't. Somebody could literally say, I haven't talked to my mom in 10 years. I'm going to write her right now. Like I have this action, like anything. And then somebody else is like, you know, it's not my mom that I'm not talking to, but God, I have a couple of relationships I need to repair, or there, you know, there's something I can do to feel better. You know. So I don't know. I love this, Jessi.
Or during your workshop, I'm going to drop and do 20.
Yeah. You know what? I'm just Jessi's over here. It's true though, Jessi. You're like, I'm not going to judge you. Do something, anything. Yeah. If you want to do 10, if you want to drop and give me 20, drop and give me 20. Like, go for it.
Just do something. Anything.
Something. Anything.
Yeah. I just realized I'm like vigorously taking notes that are completely illegible, and this is all being recorded.
Yeah, the world is going to get
notes.
The world is going to get to see this beautiful idea that you're. But here's the cool thing, and to anybody watching, I just, you know, I want you to know, like, you know, Jessi's been talking about this. She's lived this. Is not this one's not a new idea for her. Just meaning that this, and she's still learning how to like. Get it out there, like what's the best way to present it and stuff. And I think we all need to know that is like when we communicate and we lead and we're working with people, we always have to continually work on that. Like Jessi, I'm sure if you were to give a TED Talk tomorrow, like what are some things you picked up today that you would bring into tomorrow? Like what would you, from what we talked about today?
I mean, I think having a formula so you can break it down to people so they don't just say, oh, they're just happy because of that, you know what I mean? Or they're happy because they live in a bubble. So having this formula, I think the supporting evidence is phenomenal because that's just research I want to do.
Yeah.
I want to know and I want to read those stories because that shit inspires the hell out of me. So I want to, I mean, you know, there's so much out there that I love the idea of yes and too, because that there's such a division. I mean, right now there's a huge, you know, but just in optimism and pessimists, you know, that's such an interesting thing. I think that would allow to sort of soften the edges or make people engaged enough to say like, okay, I'm not going to completely shut this off if it's a yes and then just the I think the idea of just being super real. I think that is so good. I love that because I think now more than ever we need optimism, but now more than ever people are like, how in the fuck is anyone going to be positive in this situation? and so, and it's like, well, here, let me lay out people that have had it worse than us and they did it. And here's the formula that you follow. And here's something you can do right now. Check it out. Oh, that felt good, didn't it? Yeah, let's think about that. And then,
got that little dopamine hit. Feels good to do something, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's pretty cool. It sounds like a cool workshop to do with people too. Or I always like to test stuff out on my team and they're like, fine, we'll do it.
Fine, we'll do it. And then they're at the end, they're like, oh my God, we love this.
Yeah.
Jessi. I think you should. I mean, I think it's a really cool thing. And even thinking about, Mark and I never think that our work is done in the speaker or idea world. I mean, all this ideas and communicating and leading all blend together. So, I mean, what about an idea too? You were talking earlier about doing new and being better in your business because it's completely changed. Being whole from the inside out, you could maybe do more of these things where you become, you become the organization that's now doing something that you would never expect them to be doing, right? Yeah. And so, I mean, maybe think about that. Like that might be, again, might use your own formula with your team. Go, what's real right now, team? What's our opportunities? And then like, what could we actually do? And allow people that space to like come up with something. Cause I think that would be a great idea. Like, I think you should test a workshop. I think you should test a workshop because then you get real data. You are scientist, Jessi. You get real data from how people digested what you taught and what they did with it. And you could see the outcome if they're on there, especially if you did it with your team, they're so close to you.
Yeah.
So, because the bonus of that is then, especially if you do with your team, you're going to see them again, right? They're going to be talking about it. So they not only will talk about their actions, but they'll talk about the results. And that's the big part that you really want. Wow. Super cool.
Yeah. I know I'm going to use this on my children too. Like,
yes. Oh my God, that would be awesome.
So the reality is your granola bar broke. The opportunity is now you have two, and you. So
what action are you going to take?
Yeah,
you can think about being better.
Later.
And think of, you know what's beautiful, Jessi? I've already known about your reckless optimism, and now I have a formula to actually even tell people. I even love it. Like I'm already like, what is the reality? Let's talk about that. Like, I love that.
It's digestible too, with all of us being like, so we're on such a mind fuck right now. This is so digestible. It's just great. So
but I'm gonna blame you. I'm gonna blame you, Jessi, because I'm gonna sit down at the dinner table and I'm gonna ask my children these questions. And they're like, why are you asking us these questions? Stop doing that show. You keep coming up with all these things that try to get us to do recklessly optimistic stuff. Stop it. And they'll be like,
and then one day,
what's real?
And then one day they're going to write Jessi a letter and say, you know what, actually, thank you. I never met you, but my dad. And she's going to be like, oh my God.
Absolutely. Jessi, it has been fired up talking with you. You are an amazing soul. You are recklessly optimistic. You are super energetic, realistic, opportunistic, taking things to the next level. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. Thank you for dropping this idea on the world.
Jessi,
I can't wait to find out how many more recklessly optimistic people there will be. Right? Jessi,
there we
for
go.
Everybody, go ahead, do it again.
Yeah.
Jessi, for all of those people who are absolutely fascinated with you and fascinated with the idea you just dropped on the world, how can they learn more about you?
I actually have a website. It's therecklessoptimist.com. I haven't updated it in COVID, so it's there, but you can go to that. And then my company is Burn Cycle, and you can go to burn-cycle.com, or you can find me on the gram. At Mrs. Duley.
Mrs. Duley. I love me some Mrs. Duley, let me tell you.
Yeah. She's wild.
She's wild. She's beautiful. She's human. and she's an inspiration. Jessi, thank you for being with us. And if anybody out there wants to share an idea like Jessi's, you can message Mark and I at Mark and Kathy. You have to spell our names right. Notice the C in Mark's name and the E in my name. Mark and Kathy at gmail.com. Jessi, thanks for being with us today. You are an awesome, reckless optimist.
So amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you 1 million times over for what you guys do. It's so good.